I would say that succession planning is not just for massive businesses. Succession planning is important from as early as day one with a sole proprietorship. Arguably, if you're a sole proprietorship, succession planning might even be more important for you, because really the question that we're asking is what happens if the business owner or one or more of the business ownership group pass away or become disabled, or they are otherwise unable to tend to their business affairs. Maybe they become insolvent or they become divorced. So there's all kinds of different triggers in sort of a succession planning or a buy-sell event. And it's really critical that the business owner, whether they're small or a large operation, give some thought to what happens in an emergency situation. And that's really the heart of what we get at when we talk about disaster planning in the context of succession planning. The other type of succession planning is usually a little bit more optimistic. It's what happens in the event that we've just have built a business of significant value and we're thinking about retirement or we're thinking about exiting this industry. And this really helps the business owner focus and plan for the short term, the next 1 to 3 years, as well as the long term, what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. Allows them to spend some time working on the business and not just in the business through goal setting exercises and then quarterly evaluations of those goals to see, are they on track? Are they off track? And if they're off track, what do they have to do to get back on track? That will allow the business owner to really effectively plan for their business and run it as a successful operation that will continue to operate, grow if they'd like to, and prepare them for a runway of exit at their choosing. If you're a business owner, you've built something of value, and you want to understand typically what's going to happen to my people, to my customers, to my staff, when I'm ready to exit, when I'm ready to retire, who will I transition the business ownership to, and how do I maximize the value that I get out of this business that I've spent, a lifetime pouring blood, sweat, and tears into. Those are the questions that our team at NC Planning loves to assist business owners with. So feel free to give us a call. We have team members standing by, and we'd be happy to help. Choosing the right successor is something that business owners are constantly challenged with. And I think it's a really personal decision. I think it depends on what type of industry you're in. So for instance, you might be a dentist and you've built a practice that is worth millions of dollars. You've got great patients, you've got a great staff, but you just might be thinking about retirement, taking that trip to Europe, going to the beach, hiking the Pacific Northwest, whatever it might be. And you might get to a point where you're just ready to be done drilling and filling, as they say, ready to be done with the practice of dentistry. And in that instance, you start to think about, how do I transition this business successfully? How do I make sure my patients are taken care of? How do I make sure my staff is taken care of? And how do I maximize the value that I get out of the dental practice that I've built over so many years? And it's a process that involves planning. It involves taking some time and some consideration, working with a team of advisors to help identify the timeline and what the goals and the objectives are. What are the types of desires I have for what my future successor or owner will look like. Will it be a large corporation? Will it be an individual dentist or doctor? And so it becomes a very personal discussion, and you learn a lot about the business owner, their sort of preference set on how they envision the business carrying on after they're finished there. And then there's a fair amount of us sort of coaching with them or advising on ways that we can go about achieving those objectives and setting them up for the most successful transition as possible. So I think number one, when you're talking about succession planning, square one, you have to understand who are the players, who are the owners. Is this a closely held company? Is it sole proprietorship? Is it a limited liability company that's a single member? Is it a multi-member? Obviously, if you own the company 100%, you can kind of direct your future as you see fit. If you co-own your company with other partners, then it's really important that you have your team of trusted advisors look at your corporate records, your corporate documentation, to understand what are the rights and the responsibilities of the co-owners with respect to themselves, with respect to each other, and with respect to the organization as a whole. That's a starting point and allows you to sort of understand what considerations have to be made and taken into account before we get too far down the path of planning for the succession or the sale of a business. For instance, you may have an operating agreement or a shareholders agreement and bylaws that restricts ownership rights and that restricts the rights of owners to transfer their ownership interest to anyone outside the organization without the unanimous consent of all of the other members. So you really need to understand that sort of dynamic and how those owners are going to interact under the agreement before you go and start having conversations about succession planning or exit planning or selling your business. Oftentimes when we're talking about the business succession, we're talking about a business sale. You as the business owner have spent a lifetime, investing your time, your energy, your resource into building a business, and now you have built something of value. Well, congratulations, that's a wonderful achievement. And now there's discussion, or you're exploring a potential exit and sale of the business. Ultimately, if everything goes to plan and we have a successful closing, there very well could be a very large sum of money that is paid from the buyer of the business to the seller of the business. And so some of the tax considerations that need to be taken into account, they really kind of commingle with legal considerations. So for instance, is this going to be the purchase of the company, meaning a stock purchase or a membership interest purchase? Or is this going to be a purchase and sale of the assets of the company, where the new buyer forms a brand new corporation or a brand new LLC, and that company buys the assets from your existing LLC? And in sort of that latter model, we get into very, very minute details that are really important for your business, for your finances and your taxes. For example, how will the allocation of the purchase price of the business be attributed to tangible assets versus intangible assets like goodwill? And this has tax implications that you and your legal team will work with your CPA or other tax advisor to determine based on your set of circumstances, so that we can properly plan for the path to closing and hopefully make it as tax efficient and as legally efficient as possible. So if you're a business owner and you think that exiting your business or succession planning is in your time horizon for the next 1 to 5 years, and you're looking for a team of legal advisors that can help support you in your business, please feel free to give us a call at NC Planning. Our team is standing by, and we would love to be of service.